This is a new generation where only children and teenagers under the age of 20 can survive. And no, this isn't normal. 80 years ago, a mysterious virus swept across the world, killing everyone aged 20 and above. Civilization collapsed overnight, leaving behind a strange new world where no one could grow old. Now, people gather around to listen to stories from the ancient past, a time when humans could live beyond 50. In one small town, excitement fills the air today. The chief's wife has just given birth. Let's go. The villagers cheer as they rush toward the plaza where the child was born. Messengers race through the streets carrying the news. Everyone, head to the plaza. The chief's son has been born. The announcement echoes throughout the town. Finally, the entire village had gathered at the plaza, eagerly waiting for their first glimpse of the newborn child. Here he comes. The villagers erupted into cheers as a maiden stepped onto the stage, gently accompanying the smiling mother who carried her baby wrapped safely in her arms. The crowd watched in excitement. "What's his name?" one of the villagers shouted. The mother looked down at her child and smiled warmly before lifting her gaze toward everyone. No-eul. The moment his name was announced, the plaza was filled with joy and celebration, welcoming the birth of the child who would one day change their world forever. 8 years later, that tiny newborn has grown into a quiet boy who prefers spending his time reading books alone. Today, however, No-eul knows he's in trouble. Tae-yong has just informed him that his father has been looking everywhere for him. The chief has repeatedly warned him not to wander off and leave his mother worried. As the two boys walk home together, Tae-yong starts a conversation. "By the way, what were you doing out here?" "I was looking for a book for my mom." Tae-yong immediately freezes. "A book?" His reaction surprises No-eul. It seems that in this world, education is extremely limited. Even after staring at the pages for a while, Tae-yong can only see meaningless lines and strange symbols. That's when No-eul realizes how lucky he is. Unlike most children, his mother taught him how to read. Their walk continued, and so did their conversation. "By the way, this book talks about a grandfather. Do you know what that means, Tae-yong?" "I think it means your dad's dad." "Dad's dad? Huh?" "Yeah, they say people in the old world could live to be over 100 years old. Maybe that's why they needed a word like that." No-eul's eyes widen. "Really? Do you know how they managed to live that long?" Tae-yong grins mischievously. "You really want to know the secret?" No-eul nods eagerly. "By eating naughty children like you." The moment he says that, he turns around only to find No-eul trembling behind an abandoned car. Scoff. "A scaredy cat like you will never change." No wonder the chief is always worried. Before long, the two arrive at the chief's residence. But something feels wrong. A large crowd had gathered outside the entrance, blocking the way in. "Why is everyone here?" Tae-yong asks. Suddenly, No-eul pushes through the crowd. "Mom." His heart sinks as he sees his mother lying weakly on a bed. "Mom, what's wrong? Please talk to me." Slowly, she turns toward him. But the beautiful young woman he left earlier is gone. In her place is someone who looks decades older. No-eul freezes. His mind can't process what he's seeing. Before he can say anything, his father approaches. "Dad, what happened to Mom?" Slap. A loud crack echoes through the room. The chief's hand lands squarely across No-eul's face. "Where have you been all this time?" No-eul falls beside the bed. Clutching his cheek, his father's voice echoes through the room. "Listen carefully. Your mother is already 23 years old, and it's a miracle she survived this long. You should know exactly what that means." Those words are far too heavy for an 8-year-old child. No-eul cannot bear the thought of losing his mother. Tears fill his eyes. Without saying another word, he runs from the room, ignoring his father's desperate shouts. "Everyone out," the chief roared in anger. The room quickly empties. Soon, the chief sat alone beside his dying wife's bedside, silently facing the painful reality before him. A close friend enters shortly afterward. Concern fills his face as he looks at the woman lying on the bed. She entered the aging stage after collapsing 5 days ago. The chief nods silently. Everyone knows what that means. Once the aging process begins, it never stops, and nobody has survived longer than a week. The chief admits his fear. I'm not afraid of dying. His voice trembles. I'm afraid of the children we'll leave behind. I'm afraid my son will have to face this world alone. Seeing his friend in such despair, the visitor offers comfort. Do you remember the adults we admired when we were kids? We spent years trying to catch up to them. You were always the fastest among us. Hey, yeah. The chief chuckles softly. Time really does fly. Now, only 3 of us remain. The smile quickly fades, but then his friend's expression suddenly darkens. I won't be joining the next scouting mission. The chief looks up. Something feels wrong. The instant his friend removed the mask, the chief froze in shock. His friend's skin, his face. The signs have already appeared. The aging process has begun. The chief's eyes widen in horror. I'm sorry. His friend forces a weak smile. I couldn't stay with you until the end. Please, look after the children for me. The chief can only stare in disbelief. Meanwhile, outside the building, No-eul sits in a corner surrounded by several children his age. So, Godmother is dying. And you want to save her? No-eul nods immediately. Yes, his voice trembles. I heard people used to live past 100 years. Then why can't Mom live that long too? The children fall silent. Let's go ask them. A voice suddenly suggested. The kids immediately turned their attention toward the direction the voice came from. No-eul couldn't hold his curiosity. What do you mean? Ask who? The boy grins. Who else? Someone who's 100 years old, of course. The boy points toward the distant abandoned station, deep within the abandoned station, a place the old folks had always warned them to stay away from. They said he lives there, a man who is over 100 years old. Back at the chief's residence, a large map lay spread across the table as the chief's friend handed over everything he had gathered from previous scouting missions. These areas lead to dead ends, and these zones are far too dangerous to approach. After explaining the routes, he finally pointed out a major problem. We're running short on people for the next scouting mission. That's not a problem. The chief's voice was cold and unwavering. Gather all the boys. His friend blinked. The next scouting team will include 8-year-olds. What? His friend nearly jumped out of his skin. He immediately urged the chief to reconsider, warning him of the dangers and risks involved. But the chief refused to budge. Age doesn't matter anymore. In this world, everyone has to grow up fast. The group of children had finally arrived at the abandoned station. The boy who suggested the expedition proudly led the way. As they ventured deeper and deeper underground, what do you think, No-eul? He asked, do you think we'll actually find the old man down here? But there was no answer. The children stopped and looked around. He wasn't missing at all. The boy was hiding behind a wall, trembling uncontrollably as if an unseen horror stood before him. The leader immediately stormed over and dragged him out. Don't you want to save your mom, you scared little wimp? Or was all that crying just a lie? Those words ignited something within No-eul. The oldest woman in the village always held the title of godmother. When No-eul turned 5, his mother became the village's godmother. And for the next 3 years, she carried that title proudly, every birthday. Villagers would surround her with flowers and praise. She would smile warmly as she accepted their gifts. But No-eul hated those moments. He knew that everyone was only fascinated because they couldn't believe his mother was still alive. I don't need flowers anymore. Tears filled his eyes. All I want is for her to keep living. The other children couldn't fully understand his pain. Many had never known their mothers. Others had lost them at such a young age that they barely remembered them. Filled with determination, No-eul snatched the torchlight from the kid's hand. I don't care what any of you say. If you won't help me, I'll find the old man myself, and I'll ask him the secret to a long life. For a brief moment, he looked incredibly determined, like a hero ready to challenge fate itself. Unfortunately, that determination lasted only a few seconds. The moment his friends jumped out holding what looked like the remains of a dead stray dog. No-eul's soul nearly abandoned his body. The children burst into laughter. Soon afterward, they arrived at a massive underground chamber. Part of the ceiling had collapsed, allowing sunlight to pour in from above. As the children searched the area for clues, No-eul accidentally tripped over a stick buried deep within the rocky ground. He crashed face first onto the floor. As he slowly raised his head, his eyes widened. There, embedded in the dirt before him, was a gigantic footprint. Guys, look at this. It has to belong to the old man. The children rushed over immediately. After examining it, they all came to the same conclusion. The massive footprints stretched into the darkness, clearly leading somewhere. Without a second thought, No-eul rushed forward, determined to follow the trail. The others stopped him. They weren't convinced, but No-eul pointed toward the footprints. If we follow them, they should lead us to where the old man lives, right? Then suddenly, he noticed something strange. Every one of his friends had frozen, as if time itself had stopped. No-eul frowned. What's wrong? One of the children spoke in a trembling voice. Listen carefully. Stop talking. Walk over here slowly. Don't make any sudden movements. And whatever you do, don't look up. Fear instantly crawled down No-eul's spine. But after being pranked so many times already, he wasn't buying it. His friends desperately motioned for him to stay quiet, but No-eul refused. His voice reverberated through the silent chamber, spreading like a solemn sermon at dawn. Then, suddenly, a deafening crash echoed behind him. The entire chamber shook violently. No-eul slowly turned around and immediately regretted it. Standing behind him was a nightmare. Back at headquarters, Tae-yong burst through the doors. I have urgent news. Everyone turned toward him. No-eul and several other children have gone to the abandoned station. The room instantly froze. The chief shot to his feet. Are you certain? Tae-yong nodded quickly. A lot of children saw them heading that way. The chief's face immediately darkened. That location wasn't just dangerous. It was marked as one of the deadliest zones on the entire map. Back at the abandoned station, No-eul stood frozen in terror. His body refused to move. His mind refused to think. Run, No-eul, run. His friends screamed at the top of their lungs, but No-eul couldn't move. Fear had rooted him to the spot. Then, suddenly, boom. The monster launched itself into the air and came crashing down toward him. No, no, no. The children cried out in horror. But just before the creature could reach him, a figure burst from the shadows. A wooden spear slammed into the monster with overwhelming force, sending the beast flying across the hall before it crashed violently into the ground. I was wondering why it was so noisy. This place is no playground for kids. The man glanced down at No-eul. His identity was completely concealed beneath layers of bandages wrapped around his entire body. No-eul's thoughts were racing. That towering height, that deep, commanding voice, and that unbelievable strength. There was no doubt about it. This had to be him, the legendary old man. But before No-eul could gather his thoughts, the monster let out another deafening roar and struggled back to its feet. Without hesitation, the old man tightened his grip around the spear. Stay close, kiddo. It's time to show you what an old man can do. He lowered his stance and pointed the spear toward the monster, ready for the next attack. The other kids watched quietly from behind the broken walls. So the rumors were true. He really is the one they were talking about, the old man. The man carefully studied the monster. It's being cautious. It won't attack first now that it's injured. All I need to do is lure it away from the kids. The children, unaware of the danger, began cheering from the corner. Get rid of the monster. But that was a mistake. At that moment, the monster suddenly lunged toward them. Roar. It pinned one of the children to the ground. Whatever you do, do not inhale those fumes. But it was too late. The monster exhaled a dense toxic breath. The boy inhaled it instantly. In a flash, his body aged violently, from a child into an elderly figure within seconds. Hyeon-chil. The other children screamed in horror. The noise drew the monster's attention again. It turned and charged. Roar. The man swung his wooden spear between its jaws, holding it back. Get up. Run. Hurry. He kicked the monster's jaw and twisted his weapon deep into its skull. A thick cloud of toxic fumes burst out as the monster staggered. Thud. It crashed to the ground. The man rushed to Hyeon-chil. Move aside quickly. He checked his pulse. There was still a heartbeat, but he was at death's door. The man reached into his pocket and pulled out a large syringe. I don't have any other choice, he muttered to himself. Just as he was about to inject Hyeon-chil, he failed to notice the monster lurking in his blind spot as it suddenly lunged forward. Wham! It slams its body hard onto the man. The syringe fell off his hand onto the ground. No-eul could only stare at it, frozen. The monster ripped the spear out of its body with its tail, while pinning the man down on the ground. The man gritted his teeth. Run, all of you, now. The children scattered in panic. No-eul tried to move but stumbled over a stick and fell hard. When he looked up, Hyunchil was motionless. He's dead. That thought froze him completely. Am I going to die too? No, I don't want to die. If I die, I'll never see Mom again. The memory of his mother flooded his mind. He remembered the reason he risked everything to come here. If I run away now, I might never see Mom again. Refusing to give up, he reached for the wooden baton lying nearby. With all the courage he could gather, smash, No-eul swung the baton directly at the monster. But it didn't even flinch. The creature slowly turned its head. Get out of here, the man shouted. No-eul's voice trembled. You're the old man who lived 100 years, right? I have something to ask you. I came all this way to save my mom. Smack! The monster's tail came crashing down, striking him directly in the face with overwhelming force. The moment No-eul crashed to the ground, the monster released a heavy breath in an instant. Its deadly fumes spread through the air, trapping No-eul inside a cloud of danger. Gradually, No-eul's body began to transform. Within seconds, he had completely changed into an old man. As he collapsed onto the ground, his consciousness slowly began to fade. Then, he found himself in a trance-like state. It felt like a dream, yet every emotion he experienced felt incredibly real. His mother's warm embrace. Although his father appeared cold and strict, No-eul could sense the love that was buried beneath that harsh exterior. Those precious memories became the very thing that reignited his will to survive. I cannot die. With newfound determination, No-eul opened his eyes. He grabbed the massive syringe the man had dropped. His hands trembled slightly as he lifts it up. I don't know what this is, but if there's even the slightest chance, I'll take it. Jab, he drove the syringe into his own body. In that very instant, his heartbeat began pounding fiercely. His eyes sharpened as a powerful force awakened within him. In a flash, he moved. Boom. A single punch sent the monster flying across the hall. No-eul began reciting a vow of conviction, his determination burning brighter than ever. His body transformed completely. Stronger, taller, different. He leapt again, fear erased. Instinct sharpened, he grabbed the monster by the jaws and tore it apart with an unbelievable strength and brute force. The other kids could only stare in disbelief, their minds struggling to process the unbelievable sight before them. No-eul relentlessly stomped on the monster's head, crushing it again and again until it was nothing but shattered rubble. Then slowly he turned to the others. Come on, everyone, let's go. Before he could take another step, he suddenly stumbled and collapsed to the ground, losing consciousness. The children's screams filled the air as the man stepped forward slowly, his gaze dropping coldly onto No-eul's fallen body. I never thought I'd see this again. It's a miracle. The next time No-eul opened his eyes, he found himself lying comfortably on a bed. Where am I? He immediately sat up, but as soon as he heard his own voice, he froze. Instinctively, he turned toward the mirror beside the bed. The reflection staring back at him wasn't his own. Before he could process what he was seeing, a familiar voice echoed from behind, "You're awake." No-eul nearly jumped out of his skin. It seemed his fear had returned in full force. Where am I? Where are the others? What happened to me? The questions came flooding out one after another. More importantly, what was that thing? The old man remained silent for a moment before taking a seat on the edge of the bed. I'm sorry about what happened to you. His voice was unusually heavy. You will never age like ordinary people again, and you will never be able to have children. The old man lowered his gaze. To put it simply, you're no longer human. No-eul stared at him in disbelief. What the hell was that drug? He couldn't understand any of it. He quickly lifted his shirt, revealing the strange scar on his body. I heard about the virus. Is this because of it? The old man nodded. Although the drug prevented you from dying, that doesn't mean it's the cure for the virus. He explained calmly, the virus accelerates the aging process in humans. However, non-human organisms are completely immune to it. With that in mind, I created a special drug. The drug alters a person's genes and forces a mutation. Once the transformation is complete, the virus no longer recognizes the host as human, and because of that, you become immune. No-eul could only stare blankly. Suddenly, he sprang from the bed. I don't care about any of that. His voice trembled. Can this drug cure the virus or not? If it can, please give me some. The old man fell silent. I'm sorry. There's none left. You used the last dose I had. No-eul's eyes widened. His heart nearly stopped. Does that mean there's no way to save my mom? Meanwhile, back at the site of the monster attack, one of the kids was being interrogated by a village scout. Please, I've already told you everything that happened. The boy begged desperately. The guy slammed his foot hard on the child's head. Listen, kid, if you're going to lie, at least make it believable. How exactly do you expect me to believe that No-eul defeated a monster? Before the boy could answer, the scout kicked him several meters away. Do you think this is some kind of joke? That's enough. A commanding voice echoed through the area. The chief had finally spoken. The scout immediately froze. But despite being a subordinate, he still argued with the chief. He broke village rules. If the former chief were here, he'd have tied him to a tree and... I said stop. The chief's cold glare cut him off instantly. The scout clenched his teeth before walking away. Another scout approached him. Relax. Let it go for now. You've heard about the godmother and Sangjun, right? The man smirked. The chief doesn't have much time left. It won't be long before this place belongs to us. Meanwhile, the chief stood silently with No-eul's jacket clutched tightly in his hand. Tai Yong soon arrived with a report. We've recovered the boy's body. He was referring to Hyanchel. The unfortunate child had no parents and no siblings. After examining the battlefield, the chief had already reached a conclusion. Someone had definitely been there, and that person had taken No-eul. Chief, a frantic voice interrupted him. Everyone turned. It was Sangjun. The chief frowned. Sangjun should have been resting back at the village. The godmother, his voice trembled. She just drew her last breath. The words struck like lightning. The entire group froze. Murmurs spread through the crowd. The godmother is dead. Tai Yong immediately stepped forward. Leave the search to us. You should return to the village and... No, the chief's answer was immediate. We continue searching. His voice was cold and unwavering. We find No-eul, no matter what. Meanwhile, back at the old man's hideout, the old man finished preparing his equipment. It was finally time to send No-eul home. Soon, the two began walking through an abandoned railway tunnel. Darkness surrounded them. Only a flashlight illuminated the path ahead. No-eul stared at it curiously. What's that? The old man blinked. Then he remembered. This was probably No-eul's first time seeing an electric flashlight. After explaining how it worked, No-eul stared at it in amazement. Who exactly are you, mister? Are you the old man from the rumors? Questions poured from him nonstop. The old man finally sighed. Technically, I'm not alive either. That answer shattered No-eul. Tears began rolling down his cheeks. Then, can't you save my mom? The old man gently patted his head. I don't know everything that's happening, but there's one thing I do know. His voice softened. Stay by your mother's side for as long as you can. For the first time, No-eul fell silent. As they continued walking, jingle. A bell suddenly echoed through the tunnel. Both of them stopped. Jingle, jingle. The sound continued louder and louder. The old man's expression instantly changed. He slowly raised the flashlight toward the darkness ahead. The bells kept ringing. What is that sound? No-eul asked nervously. The old man's voice turned cold. It means something triggered the signal wires I set up. He narrowed his eyes. And it's not just one. Then he looked directly at No-eul. Get ready to run. The monsters continued marching forward in overwhelming numbers. 1, 2, 3. The old man tried counting them. Reaching into his pouch, he pulled out a flash bomb. Clink. He yanked the pin free. Once I count to 3, start running, and don't look back. No-eul nodded. 1, 2, 3. The old man hurled the bomb straight into the middle of the horde. Boom. A blinding flash erupted the moment it detonated. No-eul took off without hesitation. As they sprinted through the tunnels, the old man explained what he knew. These creatures are vulnerable to electrical attacks. It won't kill them, but it can stop them temporarily. He continued running while speaking. They appeared 30 years ago. No one knows where they came from. But I've heard rumors. They've been kidnapping children, taking them somewhere. That's why I came here, to find answers. Suddenly, a monster dropped from the ceiling. Without missing a beat, the old man tossed his flashlight toward. Then he thrust his spear upward. Thrust, the spear pierced straight through the monster emitter. Twisting a mechanism beneath the shaft, he activated it. ZZZZZT. A powerful electric current surged through the weapon. The monster convulsed violently before being roasted from the inside out. The old man glanced at the smoking corpse. My other spear ran out of battery, but now I've got a fresh. Unfortunately, there was no time to celebrate. More monsters began pouring into the tunnel. The old man grabbed No-eul's arm. Move. The two resumed their desperate sprint. As they ran, the old man's thoughts raced. Normally, these creatures hunted alone, so why were there so many together? Before he could find an answer, the monsters caught up. One lunged directly at them. The old man drove his spear forward. At the same moment, another monster charged straight toward No-eul. But this time, something felt different. No fear, no panic, only instinct. Without thinking, No-eul leaped into the air and vaulted clean over the creature. His eyes widened. I knew I could do it. The moment those words left his mouth, power exploded through his body. Energy gathered around his fist. Then, boom. His punch connected. The monster was blown apart instantly. Chunks of flesh scattered across the tunnel walls. But immediately afterward, blood trickled from No-eul's nose. His vision blurred. His body began shutting down again. The old man understood at once. The drug had enhanced No-eul's physical abilities far beyond human limits. His strength now rivaled several adults combined. But his young body wasn't mature enough to handle that power. Without hesitation, the old man hoisted No-eul onto his shoulder. The remaining monsters continued their relentless pursuit, chasing after them without pause. At last, one of the monsters closed the distance. The massive creature charged forward and crashed its head violently into the old man's back, sending a powerful impact through the air. The impact sent No-eul flying off his shoulder. The old man struggled against the monster, but No-eul wasn't safe. Still lying on the ground, he watched another monster charge toward him. Slowly, he closed his eyes. Dad, his voice trembled. Please save me. Then, thrust. A spear burst through the monster's jaw. No-eul's eyes snapped open. Standing before him was the last person he expected. The chief had arrived. Without turning around, he raised his weapon. Everyone. His voice thundered through the tunnel. Charge. The village scouts surged forward. A fierce battle erupted between humans and monsters. Whatever you do, don't inhale the smoke. Tai Yang shouted while throwing smoke bombs toward the creatures. The tunnel descended into chaos. Meanwhile, the chief crouched beside No-eul and gently pulled in close. No-eul, his voice softened. Is this really you? The other villagers could hardly believe it, but the chief smiled, even behind the transformation. He still recognized his son. Soon afterward, the old man limped over to them. One of his legs was gone, yet somehow he was still standing. Seeing No-eul's horrified expression, he chuckled. Don't worry, this isn't enough to kill me. The chief immediately stepped forward. Are you the old man from the rumors? Questions flooded from him, but there wasn't time for answers. More monsters were emerging from the darkness, hundreds of them. The old man slowly opened his jacket. Everyone froze. He slowly removed his jacket and threw it aside, revealing multiple explosives wrapped around his waist. You have to leave. I'll explain everything when we meet again. Then he pressed a button connected to the explosives. A faint beeping sound echoed through the tunnel. Turning toward No-eul, he nodded slowly. Come find me again when you've grown strong enough. The scouts immediately grabbed a fuel container, pouring its contents across the tunnel as they prepared for what was about to happen. The old men glanced at them before shouting, Now go." His voice shook the entire railway. The chief immediately reacted. All forces retreat. Everyone began falling back. As No-eul was carried away, the old man gave him one final piece of guidance. "Head north of the river. You'll find someone there. Someone who can help you." The device strapped to his waist began beeping faster. Around him, the monsters slowly crawled closer. The old man simply sat down, calm, unafraid. He opened the pendant hanging around his neck and stared at the photograph inside. Then he smiled and waited. Boom! A massive explosion engulfed the tunnel. The chief quickly shielded No-eul and carried him away. "Gramps!" No-eul screamed. Tears streamed down his face as he watched the flames consume the entire building. Outside, the scouting party made their way back to the village in silence. Most of the scouts were still struggling to process No-eul's transformation. Not long after, No-eul received the heartbreaking news that his mother had passed away. It can't be true. His heart pounded violently as disbelief took over. Without wasting another second, he dashed through the streets like a flash, desperate to see her one last time. In the blink of an eye, he arrived at his home. The entrance was filled with villagers, their silent faces carrying the weight of sorrow. A cold chill ran down his spine as he slowly pushed his way through the people. Then he stepped inside. There, surrounded by flowers, lay his mother, peaceful, motionless. "And Mom?" His voice trembled, his lips quivered. For a moment, he stood frozen. Then the reality finally crashed into him. A loud cry escaped his throat as tears streamed down his face. The woman who had always smiled for him, the woman he wanted so desperately to save, was gone. That night, the godmother was laid to rest. Sang-jun did his best to comfort the grieving chief, but the chief could no longer hold back his emotions. Tears slowly rolled down his cheeks. Sang-jun quietly placed a hand on his shoulder, and under the pale moonlight, the godmother was finally sent on her final journey. Meanwhile, No-eul sat alone in a corner, lost in thought, his fingers gently wrapped around the pendant the old man had given him. As he stared at it, memories surfaced once more. "Head north of the river. You'll find someone who can help you there." Those were the old man's final instructions. No-eul lowered his head. For the first time since his mother's death, he found himself wondering what he should do next. The following morning, the children were playing together in a field when their ball became lodged. High in a tree, everyone stood below it, arguing about who should climb up and retrieve it. Then, suddenly, "I'll get it," a voice answered before anyone could react. No-eul shot upward. He leaped over the tree with incredible speed. In an instant, he was already holding the ball. Then he landed gracefully back on the ground and handed it over. The children stared in complete disbelief. That was amazing. Excited cheers erupted from every direction. Soon the children swarmed around him with admiration. Not far away, the chief and Taeyong watched from a distance. They had feared the children would reject No-eul because of his new appearance. Instead, he had become even more popular than before. As the two continued talking, someone approached from the side. It was the village's new godmother, though she absolutely hated being called that. She requested a private audience with the chief. Without hesitation, he followed her. The two eventually arrived at an abandoned building. Inside, several buckets sat on the floor. Each one was filled with dead fish. The foul stench polluted the entire room. The new godmother pointed toward them. "The problem is the water." She explained that dead fish had been appearing along the river bank. The same thing was happening at the lake. This wasn't just a threat to their food supply. It threatened their drinking water as well. And winter was rapidly approaching. "The children need a new home." Her voice was calm but firm. The chief fell silent. After thinking for a moment, he finally nodded. "The scouts will begin searching in 2 days, during the next expedition." But the moment he referred to her as the godmother, she visibly frowned. As a child, she had admired the title. Back then, becoming the godmother had seemed like the greatest honor imaginable. Now, it felt more like a curse. Every godmother she knows had died within a year. Only the chief's wife had managed to survive for 3. And even she was gone now. Meanwhile, No-eul sat alone beneath a hill overlooking the village. "I miss you, Mom." He gazed up at the sky. His voice was barely a whisper. Suddenly, No-eul. He turned around. It was Deok, the boy who had led the expedition into the abandoned station. Are you okay? Deok asked cautiously. To be honest, I still see those monsters in my dreams. His expression became serious. Then he looked directly at No-eul. How are you so calm? Are you really the same No-eul I used to know? Before No-eul could answer, a strange creaking sound echoed from below. The two boys leaned forward and peeked over the edge. Several armed travelers were making their way toward the village. Immediately, the boys became suspicious. Bandits, at least, that's what they thought. Then suddenly, boo! A voice exploded right behind them. The children nearly screamed their souls out. Their terrified cries echoed across the hillside. Even the travelers below looked up. Is someone up there, Frosty? One of them called out. The mysterious figure standing behind the boys chuckled. Then he slowly lowered his hood. White hair spilled into view. A warm smile appeared on his face. Call me Ilbeak, he spoke casually. And I turned 30 years old this year. The boys froze. 30 years old. That should have been impossible. Soon, No-eul led the mysterious man and his traveling group into the village. Whispers began spreading through the gathered villagers as they watched the mysterious white-haired stranger walk beside No-eul. Sang-jun stopped them in their tracks. Tell me where you came from. If you try anything suspicious, we'll use force? Are you the one in charge of this village? Ilbeak asked calmly. I don't mean to harm anyone. As for where I come from, I crossed from north of the river. The moment No-eul heard the words, north of the river, his eyes widened. You crossed the Han River to get here. Sang-jun exclaimed in disbelief. Do you think we're a bunch of fools? It was hard to believe. Most of the bridges had long since collapsed, and the few that remained were controlled by bandits. The river itself was filled with toxic gas, making boats useless. Sang-jun argued, but before he could continue, his body suddenly staggered. Huh? He stumbled backward and collapsed to the ground. Sang-jun. The villagers rushed toward him in panic. Meanwhile, Ilbeak remained completely calm. Reaching into a small container, he took out a few pills and placed them in Sang-jun's mouth. The chief arrived just in time to witness it. Moments later, Sang-jun's eyes snapped open. Not only could he breathe properly again, but the wrinkles that had formed across his body began to fade. He looked noticeably younger. No-eul's eyes widened in shock. At that moment, he remembered the mysterious drug the old man had given him. Could this man really be the helper the old man spoke about? Ilbeak asked with a smile, Do I have something on my face? Soon afterward, nearly the entire village gathered around a building. Children climbed onto rooftops while adults crowded every corner. Inside, the chief was questioning the mysterious visitor. So, you've developed a cure? The chief asked cautiously. Exactly, Ilbeak replied. And your friend here should be proof enough. Outside, No-eul pressed his ear against the door, quietly listening. Back inside, the chief narrowed his eyes. Why bring this medicine all the way to our village? Because of a place called Utopia. His voice carried confidence. A great settlement located north of the river. Children from all over have gathered there to build a new future. Their ultimate goal is to develop and mass-produce a cure. I'm from Utopia myself, Ilbeak added while examining one of the pills. This medicine was completed 7 years ago. Mass production only became possible recently. The chief remained skeptical. Outside the room, No-eul's heart nearly stopped. A cure, a real cure. Then the door suddenly swung open. Ilbeak stepped out before delivering his final words. We need more people if we're going to achieve that dream. He gestured toward the travelers who had accompanied him. These people are also villagers who chose to follow me, hoping to secure a better future for their own village. If your people come with us, we can provide food, shelter, and hope. I'll await your decision. Without another word, Ilbeak walked away. The chief remained silent for a moment before issuing an order. Gather all the scouts. Meanwhile, No-eul secretly followed Ilbeak and his group after they left the village. Unfortunately, he soon lost sight of them. Unaware of the danger, he continued searching. Then suddenly, thud, his foot caught on something, sending him crashing to the ground. Before he could even look up, thunk, an arrow buried itself in the dirt inches from his face. No-eul froze. His entire body went cold. I was wondering who had been following us. A familiar voice came from above. It was Il-beak. In his hand was the strange pendant No-eul had dropped. The old man in the subway gave it to me, No-eul said nervously. He told me that if I traveled north of the river, I'd find someone who could help me. His eyes locked onto Il-beak. Are you that person? Il-beak blinked in confusion, slowly crouching down. Tell me everything you know about the old man. Meanwhile, back at the chief's residence, all of the scouts had gathered to discuss Utopia's offer. One scout took a sip of boiled river water and scoffed. They appeared out of nowhere and offered us a new home. Doesn't that sound suspicious to anyone? Tai Yong immediately disagreed. But that medicine saved Sang-jun's life. Everyone here saw it happen. The real reason you're against this is because it'll ruin your plans if the chief gets cured. The man's face darkened instantly. What did you just say? His voice was filled with fury. Afterward, the atmosphere grew tense. The chief shouted, attempting to calm everyone down. The scout raised his fist, ignoring the chief's shout. But his fist suddenly stopped mid-air. Then, suddenly, wrinkles rapidly spread across his face. His body began aging before everyone's eyes. What's happening? Seconds later, he collapsed. The room fell silent. Then another scout began aging, and another. They rapidly withered and dropped to the floor. Panic erupted before anyone could react. The door burst open. Chief, it was the new godmother. Her voice trembled. The children outside are. She couldn't finish her sentence. The chief rushed outside. The sight that greeted him froze his blood. All across the village, people were rapidly aging and collapsing to the ground. Cries of terror echoed through the streets, and the chief could only watch in horror. Meanwhile, elsewhere outside the village, No-eul sat comfortably beside Il-beak, eagerly telling him everything he knew about the old man. The person Gramps was talking about. It's you, right? Hope sparkled in No-eul's eyes, but that hope shattered almost immediately. I'm afraid not, Il-beak replied with a gentle smile. This is actually my first time hearing about this old man. No-eul's face fell, however. Il-beak quickly added, though I might know the person he was referring to. The light instantly returned to No-eul's eyes. Before the conversation could continue, one of Il-beak's companions hurried over. There's some kind of commotion in the village. I think we should go and check the situation. Back at the village, bodies littered the ground. Then the rain began to fall. Panic spread through the streets as villagers rushed unconscious victim under shelter. The chief knelt beside one of the victims, his mind racing. Then his eyes drifted toward a puddle of water. Could it be? He turned toward the godmother. The children, did they drink the water? The godmother nodded weakly. Yes, we boiled it first. My body feels heavy. My head won't stop spinning. Those were the last words she managed to say before collapsing face first into the mud. The chief froze. Genuine fear seized his heart. However, amidst the chaos and despair, a powerful voice suddenly echoed across the village. Attention, everyone. Il-beak's voice echoed throughout the village. Holding up the container of medicine, Il-beak calmly ordered everyone to stay composed. He gathered those who were still conscious and began distributing the medicine to save as many victims as possible. One after another, children began recovering. Parents wept in relief. Laughter slowly returned. Hope returned. The rain eventually stopped. Sunlight broke through the clouds. Standing beside Il-beak, the chief let out a long breath. This has never happened before. Thank you, Il-beak. Though the medicine wasn't enough for everyone, it had saved countless lives. But Il-beak merely smiled. What will you do now? The chief already knew what he meant. The offer still stands, Il-beak continued. Come with us to Utopia. No-eul immediately stepped forward. Dad, we should go. Remember, the old man told me to head north of the river. His voice trembled with desperation. Maybe they can save the village. Il-beak nodded. Good. My leader would definitely be interested in meeting you. No-eul blinked in confusion. Your leader. Il-beak smiled. Didn't I tell you? I might know the person the old man was referring to. He continued calmly, my boss is the one who laid the foundation for Utopia. They're the mastermind behind everything medical research, and according to the rumors, they're over 100 years old. Then they might know the old man. Ilbeek simply shrugged. Believe whatever you want. But if you're planning to come with us, you'd better start packing your bags. With that, he turned around and walked away. No-eul immediately turned toward his father. Dad? His voice was filled with anticipation. The chief remained silent for a moment before finally speaking. This isn't a game. No-eul. His voice was cold and serious. The journey ahead will be dangerous, and a single mistake could cost you your life. No-eul lowered his head for a moment. It seemed as though all hope had left him. Then, suddenly, the chief extended his hand. So, promise me something. When we leave, you'll follow my orders no matter what. No-eul froze. A bright smile spread across his face. I promise. Without a moment's hesitation, he bumped his father's fist with his own. For the first time in a long while, hope returned to his heart. Meanwhile, as Ilbeek walked a short distance away from the village, he quietly pressed a finger against the concealed earpiece hidden in his ear. I've delivered the message as instructed. A brief silence followed. Yes, they'll most likely be joining us tomorrow. Yes. Don't worry, they won't suspect a thing. A faint smile crept across Ilbeek's face. Ilbeek was never the savior the villagers believed him to be, and Utopia was far from the paradise they had imagined. Unaware of the truth, the chief never realized they had just taken the very bait toward an even greater nightmare. And with that chilling revelation, we'll end today's video here. If you enjoyed the recap, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications.